Coming up in the first half of the next hour, Tim Ashoff is going to be joining us, president of Schaefer Trucking, COO for Creek Carrier. And Kirk Albrechter is going to be with Tim as well. Kirk is the VP of Maintenance, and we're going to be talking about some of the new age alternators, high amp alternators, and new seats, and aerodynamics and fuel economy. Well, it's about time to welcome a couple of old friends to the program here. Tim Ashoff, president of Schaefer Trucking and COO for Creek Carrier. Hey, good morning, Tim.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
Doing great, and it's good to have you back on the program with us. We talk to you about every month, but it's been a long time, Kirk Albrechter, since we've talked to you. In fact, we met each other at the Opryland Hotel several years ago when you were the chairman of the TMC.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. It's great to have you with us. And, of course, Kirk is the VP of Maintenance for Creek Carrier. You guys replace a lot of trucks. You guys replace about 25% or so of your fleet each year. So you're always looking at the latest and greatest, Kirk. What are some of the things that you are looking for now in terms of some of the newer or improved technologies that are in the trucks? And is improved good enough anymore, or does it have to be new and improved, if you know what I'm saying?
I don't know that it has to be new and improved, but we're always looking for ways to make the truck better for our drivers, better for reduced maintenance, downtime, looking for ways to improve, I think, the overall offering that we have for the drivers in our fleet and those that we look to bring on board. So as far as things that we're looking at, obviously, I think, electrical systems are being challenged as more and more hotel load is added to the truck with inverters and microwaves and refrigerators and things like that.
Tim, I love that term, hotel loads, and I can't remember the first time I ever heard that, but that is kind of a relatively new term in the industry, isn't it?
It is, and sometimes I always kind of laugh, and you travel for business too, but certainly giving the notion that staying in your truck is like staying at a hotel is not quite the same, but certainly the goal is, and I think what Kirk's alluding to, is more and more people are and more and more companies, and including the OEMs, are wanting to make the truck really more and more like your home. So it's almost like your home load versus a hotel load anymore, and which certainly understandable given certainly the lifestyle that drivers want and deserve out there on the road, and so it is that balance, as Kirk alluded to, as to what can an OEM and what can then a carrier like us provide in a truck to try to make that, I guess, in some ways beyond a hotel load, hotel opportunity, and really a home for the driver.
Yeah, that's a good point. When I got my start in trucking radio back in 1972, it was a different world altogether. But trucking at that time, we all called it a job. And then we started to realize, no, this is more than a job, it's a career. And then we started to realize, as you just used the term, no, it's beyond a job, it's beyond a career, it's a lifestyle, which brings us right back to the amenities that are in the truck, Kirk. And everything runs on electricity now, so you're plugging in all kinds of stuff, from televisions to microwaves to refrigerators to CPAP machines, stereo equipment, all kinds of stuff. So that all kind of begins with batteries. So I guess one of the first things when it comes to the electrical is you're looking at batteries and bigger alternators, huh?
I think that's a piece of it. A good friend of mine, Bruce Perky, told me a long time ago that batteries are not a nuclear reactor. There's a limited amount that you're going to be able to get out of them. And
that's something
I go back to that. I go back to that on a regular basis. But whether it's alternators or cable runs or just the locations for the batteries, you have to understand and manage the power on the truck. Obviously, limit the parasitic drains that occur, and put the best batteries on that are going to last, and the best alternator on that's going to be able to recharge them in the time that the truck's going to run. Now, sometimes batteries are the biggest limiting factor. You can have a 300 or 400 amp alternator, but the batteries aren't going to take the charge. You put a battery on that only takes 30 amp hours at a time, and you could put a 165 amp alternator and accomplish everything that you could accomplish with those batteries. So you need to look at both and make sure that they're both capable for what you need them for.
So when you are speccing out the new replacement trucks for the fleet, Kirk, I understand you're looking at a 4-year battery?
We are. We don't, I think looking back at the battle over the years, and I'll call it a battle, on flooded cell versus AGM and the various makes and models of each, what we've found is that each survive in different conditions, and some survive better than others. And it's been a period of shakeout and trying to figure out which one works best for the environment that we're going to use them in.
Do you use that when you let's say you're going to purchase 20 trucks, 20 tractors? Will you spec the batteries the same in all of those, or are you looking at application in terms of what that particular unit needs? Are you going by on a unit by unit basis or a general basis?
For us, it's more of a fleet application, so they'd all be spec'd the same. Mm-hmm. If we're spec'ing day cabs versus a sleeper with an APU, then we'd probably look at different batteries.
Yeah, understood. Driver comfort, and you mentioned Bruce Perkey. You were chairman of TMC. TMC got it started back in the old RCCC days, back in the 1950s, when there was absolutely no concern for the driver. The driver replaced the horse who pulled the buggy in terms of the way folks thought in trucking back in those days. And it was a rough road to hoe. There was no amenity at all, no heaters, certainly no air conditioning. Now, again, when you get to the idea of the lifestyle model that we have in trucking, things like seats and other things for driver comfort are paramount. What are some of the driver comfort things, and what about seating? I'm sure you talk to drivers about some preferences in those regards.
I think seats are always a topic of conversation, and there's a multitude of seat manufacturers out there. And most of the OEs have their own standard, and it's a matter of figuring out which one's going to appeal to the majority of the drivers in our fleet. There's some that are still exorbitantly priced, and others that are on the lower end. And I think in the end, you're trying to figure out what works best and what's going to make the most of our fleet happy. So as we look at seats, it's a constant look at what improvements there have been and what issues we may have had with those seats over time. And then the driver feedback. Obviously, they're spending quite a long time on a day in those seats, and we want them to be comfortable in them.
Tim, you and I have talked about this more than once on the program in terms of what Kirk just mentioned, driver feedback. Is equipment something that you hear a lot about, or is it mainly other stuff, some more of the business side of the operations in terms of hours and, miles and things like that?
Well, I get the opportunity to hear it all. So, some at times, it is some things about equipment, and that's Kirk and I were just talking about some feedback we've gotten early this morning from different drivers. So we all have an open door policy here, and get feedback on whatever area. And one of the things that makes it difficult, and sometimes you have to have a good discussion with the driver to give them a full picture is even as we try to improve that cab for the driver, there's unintended consequences, or there's things that the way systems work today, you don't know until you have it. And Kirk mentioned before inverters, and certainly inverters are important to drivers, and them having the power in the cab that they need for different devices. And you also mentioned CPAPs. Well, we've equipped all of our new trucks with inverters, and then come to find out that some of the safety systems in there they have with respect to power, they don't work so well with CPAPs at times, because they will cut out depending on what may be going on with the power level in the batteries or the truck starting up or otherwise. And then that was interrupting a driver's sleep because of the CPAP kicking out and then having to reset. So we had to work with the manufacturers and find a solution to that then. So as we continue to make improvements for the drivers, they don't always go as smooth as you would like, and then we need to work with them to understand what is going on with a system we may add, which we intended it to be a driver benefit and a driver comfort, and have to have that feedback in order to see how is it working. And there are a lot of things that, as much as we try and as much as the OEMs try, don't work as intended, and a lot of that's for good reason. Like in the example I just mentioned, it's obviously for a safety reason, but then that was having a counter effect on using a CPAP. So driver feedback is important, and then often it is the feedback you get, you still have to look for, well, what's the root cause of that? And so it's not that we're always able to immediately correct a situation or even understand a situation a driver may be raising. We have to often do more research or get some real life examples of what's going on with the piece of equipment.
The other aspect of the tractor, Kirk, of course, beyond driver amenities, driver comfort, and things like that, of health and well-being, are the health and well-being of the bottom line in terms of fuel economy, and then health or well-being of the overall world in terms of CO2 reduction, things like that. How many more steps do you think we can get out of aerodynamics? Are we pretty much maxed out on aerodynamic additions in terms of foils and all of the different techniques that are being most of the aerodynamic stuff beyond just the design of the hood of the truck and maybe some of the other things are add-ons. And of course, every time you add something, you get a little bit less bang for your buck in terms of percentages. Are we maxing out on aerodynamics right now at this point, or is there much more to come?
Oh, I think there's more to come. I think, I've seen designs on future truck with Department of Energy and what they're looking at. There's changes to the cab itself that will probably come. Single seat versus dual seats in the front, the concept trucks that are out there. But I also think that the directing air is not all that it can be at the current moment. So I expect some things down the road on that. But I expect the bigger changes to be on the trailer. For the longest time, the trailer's been left out of it, and it's a square box being dragged down the road. And although you may put a bubble on the front and a tail on the rear and skirts underneath, there's still things to do to reduce drag. So I think that the majority of changes to come are going to be there. We've done things over the years with the trailers on skirts and tails and automatic tire inflation and low rolling resistance tires, but there's still room, and there's still room on our.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it, that if you go back and take a look at trailers in, say, the 1930s and 40s, they were rounded in the front for aerodynamics. And then, of course, being able to cube them out for commodities kind of took that over. But it's kind of funny that they were more aerodynamic back then than they are now, in a sense,
It is, and the bubble on the front of the trailer, when that was the rage probably 20 years ago, I think, a lot of fleets went that way, and then a lot of them backed off after they found that their trailers were getting stacked in yards and the noses were getting smashed in. They were spending more on wreck repair or accident repair than they were benefiting from the fuel savings.
Yeah, boy, there's another factor that maybe we can get into in a future discussion. But guys, thank you so much for being with us here this morning. I always look forward to talking with you, Tim, and Kirk. It's great to talk to you again.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, and hope you had a happy Thanksgiving and have a great Christmas season.
You too. Here we are, December 1st, huh? You got your lights up yet?
Yeah, I'm a little behind up here, so
yeah,
we'll have to look down towards yours.
Well, I'll tell you what, our neighbor, I'm practically the last guy on the block here, so we got to get working. Guys, we'll take care. We'll see you later.
All right, thank you.
Take care.